kuna watu wako na njama ati wanataka kusisukuma kutoka serikali ya Jubilee niende pembeni. Mimi nawauliza, wakati tulitafuta serikali ya Jubilee, Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta alikuwa na mimi ama alikuwa na wale wakora wako na yeye saizi? Si alikuwa na mimi tukitafuta serikali?
All right, that's the Deputy President who was speaking over the weekend and saying that there are people intent at edging him out of government. But in the meantime, President Uhuru Kenyatta had been meeting some senior government officials, including swearing in new chief administrative secretaries in State House. If we can listen to what President Uhuru Kenyatta told the new CASs, then you see the focus of the two leaders.
We are here to support you, to work together with you. I am looking forward to you also supporting me to be able to deliver on my agenda for the people and the Republic of Kenya. And mine is to wish you God's blessings and success as you embark on your duties, and to encourage you that if you walk alone, you may walk fast, but if you walk together, we shall go far. Respect those who you are going to join. Do not go and think you're going to overload. Respect them, work with them, because a team moves much faster and much stronger than an individual.
All right, a team is much stronger than an individual, and there appears not to be a team anymore at the top. Does it concern you that the President and the Deputy are reading from different scripts, like we will hear even in some other conversations we've been having?
Sam, that is very true. It really concerns me because, you know, we are a constitutional country. We are a country of rules and laws. And one of the cardinal rules is the Constitution. The presidency was created by the Constitution, and it includes the president and the deputy president. In America, one of the first considerations campaigning president or that helps a president to win is the choice of your deputy president, because they say that the deputy president is a breath away from the seat. So if anything happens to you, God forbid, the deputy president takes over. So the man you pick as your running mate is supposed to be your principal assistant, a man you work with, and by law, a man who's supposed to be by your side. Now, when you see a president governing a country without his deputy president, that is really unfortunate. That is really unfortunate. I know in Chonjo in 1977, I think, made it illegal to imagine the death of a president. Let me ask you now, I'm not imagining the death of a president here, but I'm saying that God forbid if anything were to happen with the current president, Uhuru, Ruto constitutionally takes over. Now, if you exclude him from the day-to-day running of government, if you make him an enemy to the current cabinet, then what happens to you? What happens to the country if anything happens to you? What we are seeing today is very unfortunate, and I sincerely pray that God will touch Uhuru's heart and have a change of heart and begin working with this deputy. It is for the good of this country that we respect laws and the rules. It's for the good of this country that we don't personalize these positions. You know, leadership is transitory. Today, Uhuru is the president. Tomorrow it will be somebody else. So let us respect the rules. Let us respect the laws. And let the president do his job as president, and let the deputy president do his job as the deputy president.
You know, that's very interesting, because we'll later talk about the position of deputies in this country, that every person should do their job, because I'm not sure the Constitution is very clear on specific duties of deputy president or even deputy governor. But that's a conversation for later. For you, Honorable Oluoch, of course, we've been on this road for quite some time. Let's listen to what the DP is saying about people that want to push him out of government. He spoke over the weekend.
Ati kuna watu wanajaribu kutusukuma tuondoke kwa serikali. Ati kuna watu wengi, hawa viongozi wengi wameteswa ati kwa sababu ni marafiki ya hasla. Na mimi nataka niwaambie jeshi ya polisi. Polisi tunawaheshimu. na kazi yenu ni kulinda amani. Hatutaki polisi wafanye siasa, wanasiasa wafanye siasa. Na kama mwanasiasa ameshindwa na siasa, wachana na polisi wasimamie mambo ya amani.
So listen to that, and Honorable Lodge, I mean, what has gotten us to this point? Of course, you've seen them getting to this point, but is it anybody's mistake? Because DG says that it is the making of the president.
I think before you reach a point where you're choosing your deputy president or vice president, as it would be in other jurisdictions, I think so many things need to have happened. You need to consider first what is the ideology that puts you together. Of course, there is the political balancing about what does it bring on the table, and that seems to be the arithmetic. I'm coming from Rift Valley, put together with the vote of Central, and I think that's probably where the problem is. I think if we have a situation, and I'll use the American example, Biden and Obama, they were both senators and they had a long history of being together, and I think there was a very careful selection of who's going to be deputy. Obama was the more outgoing, the more vocal, the more expressive, and I think Biden the more laid back, resolute, and the backroom person who did the bulwark. And if you listen to some of what Obama has said in his memoirs, Biden was the last person in the room, and he would be the person who would, behind the scenes, be able to twist a little bit of changing of the narrative and putting other perspectives, but from behind the scenes. Never at any point wanted to be either at par or ahead or seeking to forge to the left or to the right of the president. And I think this was because perhaps ideologically and in terms of their thinking and where they came from, there was so much that bound them together other than the putting together of tribes. I think the problem is until we get to the point where our politics becomes that of a platform and an ideology and a philosophy that drives people together, you will find a situation where if it is about balancing your tribe and my tribe and we put the arithmetics together, things will begin to change. That's my first point. I think my second point is that when you put together in the Constitution, and I know we are coming to this topic, the assumption is that the vice president carries the same weight of delivery of the manifesto that you put together. And I think this is where the problem is. Somewhere midstream, and I know it's very popular to say some strangers came in the form of BBI and changed their objectives or their purpose or their vision. But what about all these things? The president still continues to talk about Big Four and the things he needed to deliver. He's still creating jobs. He's still creating water. He was in Madare constituency just the other day. I saw him in Dandora. I saw him in Embakasi. Those are things that Jubilee said that they wanted to do. I have seen him opening roads. In Nairobi, they're doing 18 kilometers in Madare constituency alone through the NMS. Why has the deputy president abandoned this midstream for something he now calls a 2022 hustler narrative, creating, I don't know, economy and nini for the young people, the local person? These are things that he could quietly craft as his 2022 agenda in the same way that Biden did. Biden didn't have to abandon healthcare and all those platforms that he and Obama stood for, and it is not that he did not have strong opinionated reasons or things that he wanted to do during his presidency, but he let Obama run his vision, which they jointly went for. And I think that's the second problem. The deputy president simply believed that after the second term, the president was supposed to be a lame duck, hand over the instruments of power to him, and allow him to craft 2022 while they had not even done half of what they had promised to us as Jubilee. So I think that's where the rain started beating us. And this whole idea, and she read about some people came and they're chasing him, I think it's chasing a lot of shadows. The deputy president and the president, and this is my final point, the president said at Bomas that we were running a race, and midstream, where he thinks now he's supposed to be handing over the baton, this guy is running on the opposite direction. That's where the problem is.
Okay.
That's the jinx that afflicts these two people.
Okay, all right. And there's something else I want us to listen to from the Deputy President. But before we do so, Honorable Kamket, of course, we've heard you on record on what you've said about the Deputy President. But do you think there's anything that can be done at such a time when they appear to be reading from very different scripts?
There is a Swahili saying, mziba wa kujitakia hauna kilio. I'm very surprised to see my friend, the Deputy President, complaining that there are people trying to push him out of government now. I mean, really, that gentleman abdicated, literally. He left government way back. And
was he structurally edged out, or he left on his own?
No,
volition?
He left on his own volition. He is the one who began. He began to campaign from 2018. Actually, after we were sworn in, the next week or 2 weeks later, he was on the campaign trail that he wants to become president, and he had just come from an election. So, and the president had been very patient with him. So really, where we have reached now, it's too late, and I think in the constitutional reforms that we're talking about, I think one of the things that must be addressed is this idea, just like my friend here, Mr. Mahangi. Mr. Mahangi is always at loggerheads with his governor. But, you know, this whole idea of this is your running mate, and this is your deputy, and you will stay with him for 5 years, whether you like each other or not. You know, I think there should be a provision that we should change the law a bit. So that,
okay, you're getting into a conversation around us at the moment, but let's listen to what the Deputy President said about the public debt and the expenditure in this country.
Hatuwezi kuendelea kutumia pesa ya mikopo kusukuma mambo yetu ya maendeleo. Lazima tuwe na mbinu mpya. Na mbinu mpya ni kuhakikisha kwamba mahasla wako na biashara, mahasla wako na kazi, watalipa ushuru, na tutakuwa na pesa ya kusukuma mambo ya maendeleo. Hatutakuwa na haja ya kutafuta mikopo ambayo imetuletea matatizo kama taifa la Kenya.
As of November 2020, the public debt was standing at 7.2 trillion shillings. But when the Uhuruto government took over in 2013, it was at about 1.79 trillion. So that's an increment of more than 5 billion shillings. So when the Deputy President is speaking the way he is, why is he speaking like that? Because he's been in government, they've made the decisions to go for external debt, whether it's domestic or external, including the Eurobond 1-2. Why is he speaking like that?
You know what the Deputy President is doing in that particular statement? What has happened is that he has actually moved on. Let us be real here. Is that he has moved on now. He's imagining what will happen in his government. This government is Uhuru's government with him. But in this government where will be the boss, he's saying he will prefer creating revenue locally. You know, in 2002, when Kibaki took over the presidency, he actually changed the approach, and they made the budget, 95% of the budget came from local revenues. So what Ruto is saying is that when he becomes president, he will prefer to utilize, he will prefer to raise funds locally instead of going to foreign debt. That is what he's saying. But then
how can he distance himself from the decisions of a government he has been deputy since 2013?
That's where I'm coming to. That is why the other question you asked is, are people trying to push him out of government? Are his friends being targeted? Yes. I mean, you must be new in this country not to understand that there are very strong forces that are trying to push him out of government. He formed this government with the president, but it's being pushed out. Let me give you the example of Kisii last week when I was arrested on Monday for going to receive the deputy president of this republic at Kisii school grounds so that I can accompany him to the stadium for the burial, for the funeral of my friend, Charles's father. Now, if he's not being pushed out of government, how does a deputy governor who goes to receive a deputy president gets arrested? That time, my post, the governor, is waiting to receive the president.
But the question I'm asking you, DG, when the deputy president is saying that the focus of his government will be to groom businesses within the country, he's calling it the hustlers nation, why has he not been able to do that while he has been DP, that you've seen the public debt growing from 1.79 to 7.2 trillion as of November last year?
When you're a deputy, you dance to the tune of the boss. You see, we have this saying that says that whoever controls the piper determines the music that will be played. Now, who is controlling the piper here? It's the president. So it's the one who's determining which music will be played. When you're a deputy, you play second fiddle.
Okay.
You don't play number one.
Okay. Honorable Lodge, can you distance yourself, if you're the deputy president or deputy governor, can you distance yourself on the fiscal decisions that have been made by an administration?
I think it's what I call political bad manners. You know, the Constitution could only craft a situation where the deputy president is required to comply with things to do with collective responsibility, and I think that's the first point. He is collectively bound by decisions of government, decisions of cabinet, and I think you reach a point where now you want to make contradictory statements. I think the political good manners requires that you either step aside or keep quiet. I think that's the first point. I think the second point is that the issue of debt that we are talking about here has been accrued at a time when the chair of budget was Ichung'wah for 3 years, a person who is a deputy president ally. The chair of finance was Chelimo, my former colleague at my former alma mater. He was the chair of finance, and collectively they were responsible for crafting, at least in the National Assembly, the agenda of government in terms of public debt, in terms of our budget, fiscal policy, in terms of revenue collection. They were collectively responsible of how we manage these things.
And the Minister of Finance.
And the Minister for Finance, the former, at least the former one, was perceived to be a deputy president person. How can you have had all these structures and your key men? In fact, there is a book called All the President's Men. These were all the deputy president's people in charge of the very key dockets that he now says is responsible for the economy he wants to fix. This is political
said
bad
that the
manners.
president calls the shots. Is that so?
No, it isn't. As a deputy president, you are, and I gave the example of Biden, somebody who behind the scenes was the steady voice of reason that guided the person who is said to be in charge. What the deputy president ought to be doing is not going on top of his vehicle and countermanding things. He himself is supposed to be sitting behind the scenes at State House and telling the president, look, we need to craft this along this line. Call your men, Ichung'wah and Chelimo, at least the time when they were leading these committees, and tell them we need to re-engineer our public debt portfolio to be able to address this. You cannot have benefited from government and being the deputy for all these years, and then in your seventh year, you now want to come and say that, you know, we cannot do this. It is just not proper.
Okay, all right. Honorable Kamket, I know you have a lot to say, but I'll give you the opportunity after the break. But first, let's take a look at some feedback coming through on Twitter. Citizen TV Kenya, Sam Gituku, the hashtag to use is Daybreak. Do we have those that we can look at? We have Jacob Abere is saying that the office of deputy is jinxed. It's those who is not jinxed. It is those who have been given opportunity to be who fronts noses to succeed the bosses than going backseat and come out in a different package like Kibaki did. So the system hates that. Let's talk about the jinxed deputies and comparing how US presidents select their running mates with how Kenyan presidents select one. Is like comparing day and night. Ours is about numbers behind your deputy and nothing like ideology. So is that factual? Is it just an opinion? We'll talk about that as we focus on troubled deputies, from deputy presidents to deputy governors. Is it a role that is just for convenience or to just get enough votes? Or do they really have a real role that they should be playing to help their bosses and the regions that they lead? After the break.